The night was silent on the frozen planet. Snow fell slowly from a dark sky, covering everything in white. The wind howled like a hungry beast, carrying the sound of sorrow across the land. In the middle of this endless cold sat a widow, an alien woman with eyes full of sadness. Her 2 children pressed close to her sides, their small bodies shivering in the freezing air. She wrapped her thin arms around them, but her strength was fading. The fire she had made hours ago was already dead, leaving nothing but black ashes in the snow. The children tried to stay quiet, but their breaths were sharp, their teeth chattering as the cold bit deeper. The widow whispered soft words to them, her voice trembling. "Stay with me, my little stars. Stay alive." Her voice cracked. Loneliness had lived in her heart for many years, but tonight it felt heavier than ever. She looked up at the sky where billions of stars burned far away. Somewhere out there, she believed, were the humans. She had never seen one with her own eyes, but stories told her they were strong, brave, and kind. She closed her eyes and prayed to the silent stars. "Human, hear me. Adopt my children. End my loneliness. Give them the life I cannot." Her children looked up at her. They did not understand her full words, but they understood her sadness. One child clutched her worn clothing, the other buried his face into her arm. The widow kissed their foreheads, her tears turning into ice on her cheeks. The planet around them was dead. No trees, no animals, only endless snow and broken ruins from a war long past. Her husband had fallen in that war, leaving her alone to protect their children. Since then, every day had been a battle against hunger, fear, and despair. She had carried hope only for her children, but now, even that hope was breaking. Suddenly, the silence was broken. A faint hum rolled across the far Ozine sky. At first it was small, almost hidden under the howling wind, but then it grew louder, stronger, like the heartbeat of a giant. The widow's eyes opened wide. She lifted her head. Through the falling snow, a light appeared. At first, it was only a flicker, then a beam that cut through the darkness. The children gasped and pressed closer to their mother. The widow's heart raced. Was it a dream, or was it real? The light grew brighter. A shadow appeared above the clouds. A ship, a human ship. Her body shook, not from the cold this time, but from fear and hope mixed together. She had prayed for this moment, but now that it was here, she did not know if she should be afraid. Would the humans listen to her plea, or would they see her and her children as nothing but strangers, not worth saving? The ship slowly descended, its engines humming against the silence of the planet. Snow blasted into the air as it came closer, settling on the ruins around her. The widow stood, her knees weak, her arms holding her children tight. The ramp of the ship began to open. A blinding white light poured out, shining over the widow and her children. She shielded her eyes, heart pounding in her chest. Then, through the bright light, she saw shadows moving, figures stepping down, human figures. The widow held her breath. Her children clung to her with wide, frightened eyes. This was the moment her prayer would either be answered or shattered. "Please," she whispered to the falling snow. "Let them hear me." And with that, the first human footsteps touched the frozen ground. The widow's story had begun. The humans had arrived, but before their eyes could see her fully, the widow's mind drifted back. Her story had not started on this frozen wasteland. It began years ago, when her world was alive with light and laughter. Once her home planet was filled with tall crystal trees that glowed at night, shining like lanterns across the valleys. Rivers of silver water cut through the land, carrying songs of life. In those days, she was not a widow. She was a wife, and her heart was full. Her husband was strong and gentle, a warrior of their people. He often carried their children on his shoulders, laughing as they ran through the glowing forests. He promised her that no matter what came, he would protect their family. She believed him, for his eyes always burned with courage. But peace did not last. From the darkness of space came another race, cruel and merciless. They desired the riches of her world, the crystals, the silver water, the life energy of the soil itself. They brought fire and steel, raining destruction from the sky. The widow still remembered the day the war reached her village. Explosions turned the night into fire. Screams filled the air. She clutched her children close as her husband placed a weapon in his hands and ran into the fight. "Stay alive, Tutoem," he told her. "Keep them safe." That was the last time she saw him. The war ended with nothing but ruins. The enemy destroyed her world, leaving ash and frozen wastelands behind. Many of her people were gone, scattered across space. She became one of the lost, carrying her children through broken lands, searching for a place where they could live. Days turned to months, months turned to years. Hunger clawed at them, cold wrapped around them like chains. Her children grew thinner, their eyes too old for their age. She told them stories every night to keep their hearts alive, stories of the glowing forests, of their father's bravery, of hope beyond the stars. But inside, her own hope was breaking. She had heard whispers of humans. Some said they were dangerous, conquerors of worlds. Others said they were different, that humans carried something rare inside them, compassion, a fire that burned not only for themselves, but for others. She chose to believe the second story because it was all she had left. If humans truly had compassion, maybe they would help her children. Maybe they would see them not as enemies, not as strangers, but as family. Every night, when her children slept, she looked at the stars and prayed, "Human, hear me. You are strong, you are brave, but please, be kind. Take my children. Give them a life I cannot." Her prayers carried across empty skies, carried with her tears. And now, standing in the snow with her children in her arms, she saw the answer falling from the sky, a human ship. Her body trembled as she remembered all the pain, all the loss, all the years of wandering. Everything had led to this moment. Would they understand her? Would they care? Or would they turn their backs, leaving her children to vanish into the cold? The ramp of the human ship touched the ground with a heavy thud. The widow pulled her children close. She had given everything. She had lost everything. But she still had one last gift left, her plea, and she would use it with every breath she had. The ramp of the human ship lowered slowly, its metal groaning as it touched the frozen ground. A wave of warm air escaped from inside, carrying a faint smell of oil, steel, and something the widow had never known before: safety. The light from the ship poured out like a second sun, shining against the endless snow. The widow pulled her children close, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned the sound of the wind. Her children clung to her, their wide eyes fixed on the bright doorway. Shadows moved inside the light. Figures appeared, tall, armored, and strange. The humans. The widow's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but fear chained her voice. What if they did not understand her language? What if they saw her as an enemy? She remembered the stories. Some called human saviors, others called them destroyers. Which ones had landed before her now? The first human stepped down the ramp. His boots sank into the snow with a crunch, leaving deep marks behind. He raised a hand, signaling to the others. More followed him, carrying strange weapons that glowed faintly in the white light. The children whimpered. The widow pressed them tighter against her chest. She forced herself to stand tall, though her legs were weak from hunger and cold. The humans stopped a short distance away. Their helmets hid their faces, only glowing visors showing through. They spoke in low voices, words too quick for her to understand. One of them pointed at her. Another raised a weapon slightly. Her heart almost broke. Was this the end? After everything, after years of wandering, would they kill her now? She swallowed hard, then lifted her voice against the storm. "Human," she cried, her voice echoing in the frozen air. "Please, hear me." The humans fell silent. Their helmets turned toward her, glowing eyes fixed on her and her children. The widow's chest rose and fell quickly. She stepped giant forward, her arms shaking as she lifted her children for them to see. "These are my children," she said, her words heavy with tears. "They have no home. I have no hope. Take them, adopt them, give them life." For a long moment, no one moved. The wind blew across the ruins, carrying her words into the dark sky. Then one human lowered his weapon. Slowly, he removed his helmet. The widow gasped. The face revealed was pale compared to her own, but strong, with sharp eyes that carried both caution and curiosity. His breath rose in the cold, but his gaze softened as he looked at the children. One of the children reached out a trembling hand, pointing at him with wide eyes. The human captain crouched slightly, trying to meet the child's gaze. His lips moved, speaking words the widow did not know, but his tone was gentle, not harsh. The widow's heart fought between hope and fear. She wanted to believe this human was different, but behind him, other crew members still whispered nervously. One shook his head, another gestured for him to return. The captain looked back at his crew, then back at the widow. His face showed conflict. He was caught between duty and something deeper, something human. The widow fell to her knees in the snow. Her tears spilled down her cheeks and froze instantly. "Please," she whispered again. Do not let my children die. End my loneliness." The silence was heavy, as if the stars themselves were waiting. The captain clenched his jaw. His hand reached out slowly, hesitating just above the child's small hand. But before he could touch them, the snow around them shifted. A faint growl echoed from the ruins. Dark shapes moved in the distance. The widow's breath caught. They were not alone. Something else had arrived. The growl grew louder, echoing through the frozen ruins. The widow's heart froze as she pulled her children close. The humans turned their weapons toward the shadows, their visors glowing red in the snowstorm. The captain raised a hand, signaling his crew to stay alert. From the ruins, dark figures appeared, strange, tall creatures with jagged armor and glowing eyes. Their claws scraped the ground as they moved closer. The widow recognized them instantly. They were the same race that had destroyed her world, the same monsters that had taken her husband. Her children whimpered in fear. She whispered quickly, "Stay quiet, my stars. Stay with me." The humans formed a line, weapons ready. Energy hummed as their rifles lit up, casting sharp blue light across the snow. The alien creatures hissed, spreading out to surround them. The captain's mind raced. He looked at the widow kneeling in the snow, clutching her children. She was weak, helpless, but her eyes begged for mercy. He had come here on a mission, not to adopt alien children. His orders were clear: avoid risks, gather resources, and return. But here she was, throwing his duty into chaos. One of his soldiers stepped forward. "Captain, we don't have time for this. Leave her. The enemy is coming. We can't save everyone." The captain hesitated. He felt the weight of his crew's eyes on him, waiting for his choice. The easy decision was to retreat, close the ramp, and lift off. That was survival. That was duty. But then his gaze fell on the children. Their small faces were pale, their breaths quick, their bodies shivering in the cold. They were innocent. They were not soldiers, not enemies. They were just children. And the widow's eyes, her plea had pierced deeper than any weapon. The alien creatures shrieked and began to move closer, their steps heavy in the snow. The captain tightened his grip on his weapon. He made his choice. "Hold your ground," he ordered his soldiers. "We're not leaving them." The soldiers looked shocked, but they obeyed. The captain stepped forward, placing himself between the widow and the approaching enemy. His voice was firm but calm. "Get behind me," he told her. The widow's eyes widened. She had not expected this. For the first time in years, someone was standing in front of her, protecting her and her children. Her chest tightened with emotion, but she quickly obeyed, pulling her children close behind the human captain. The creatures screeched and rushed forward. Blue blasts erupted from the humans' weapons, lighting up the night. Explosions cracked across the ruins, and the battle began. The widow crouched low, covering her children with her arms. Her heart pounded as the snow around them shook with fire and light. She wanted to scream, to run, but she stayed still. She knew her children's lives depended on these humans. The captain fought fiercely, his shots precise, his movements steady. His crew followed, forming a shield around the widow and her children. But the enemy kept coming, their claws slashing, their roars echoing. In the middle of the chaos, the captain looked back at the widow for just a moment. Their eyes met. She saw resolve in his gaze, the kind of strength she had once seen in her husband. The widow whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe humans are different." The battle raged on, snow turning red under fire and blood. The captain knew the fight was only beginning, but one thing was clear in his mind. He had made his choice. He would protect them, even if it cost him everything. The battle ended with silence. The last enemy creature fell into the snow, its body burning with the blue fire of human weapons. The night grew still again, broken only by the sound of heavy breaths and the crackle of cooling rifles. The humans stood in a circle, weapons raised, scanning the ruins for more threats. The captain lowered his gun slowly, his breath rising in the cold air. His crew was tense, angry, and confused. One soldier spat into the snow. "Captain, this is madness. We risked our lives for an alien widow and her spawn. They are not our problem." Another soldier nodded. "We have orders. Command will not forgive this. Every minute here puts us in danger." The captain listened, but his eyes stayed on the widow. She was still kneeling in the snow, her children pressed against her sides. Their small hands clung to her, their eyes wide with fear. She whispered comfort, even though her own voice shook. The captain walked toward her. The soldiers muttered, but they did not stop him. He crouched down in front of the widow, close enough to see the ice on her lashes, the pain carved into her face. "They are safe now," he said softly. She looked at him, her eyes glistening with tears. "Safe, because of you." Her children looked up at the human captain. One of them, the smaller boy, reached out a trembling hand. He touched the edge of the captain's armor with a cautious finger. The human did not pull away. Instead, he lowered his hand and let the child hold it. For the first time in his long service, the captain felt something he could not explain. Duty had always guided him, orders had always ruled him, but here, holding the fragile hand of a child from another world, he felt something stronger than orders. He felt human. Behind him, the crew argued in low voices. "Captain, we can't bring them aboard. They could be dangerous. Command will reject them. We don't even know if they can survive with us." The captain turned his head slightly. His voice was firm. "They're just children. Look at them. Do they look dangerous to you?" Silence followed. The truth was clear. The widow and her children were weak, starving, and broken. Yet in their eyes there was life, hope, and a desperate plea for compassion. The captain reached into a pouch at his side and pulled out a small ration pack. He tore it open and offered it to the widow. She hesitated at first, then accepted it with shaking hands. She broke it into 2 pieces and gave them to her children before taking a bite herself. Her tears fell again, but this time they were mixed with relief. "Thank you," she whispered. The crew looked uneasy. To them, this act was dangerous. To the widow, it was everything. The captain stood tall again, looking at his men. "We came here for resources, yes, but sometimes the greatest resource is not minerals or fuel. It is life, and I will not leave them here to die." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They knew their captain well. Once he made a decision, nothing could move him. The widow pressed her forehead against her children's heads, holding them close. For the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. But in the distance, beyond the ruins, another growl echoed. The danger was not gone. The night was not finished testing them. The captain tightened his grip on his weapon, his jaw set. This was more than a mission now. It was a test of humanity, and he would not fail. And the snowstorm grew heavier, hiding the ruins in a white veil. The widow sat close to her children, her thin arms wrapped around them like a fragile shield. She had seen many storms before, but tonight felt different. The cold was sharp, the silence too heavy. Something was watching. The human captain felt it too. His instincts, sharpened by years of war, warned him of danger. He raised a hand, signaling his crew to stay alert. The soldiers formed a wide circle around the widow and her children. Their rifles glowed faintly, humming with power. A growl rose from the darkness. It was low at first, then it spread, echoing across the ruins. The widow's breath caught in her throat. She knew that sound. It was the sound that had haunted her dreams for years. Her enemies had returned. Dark shadows moved in the storm. Red eyes glowed in the snow, dozens of them. The creatures stepped forward, tall and armored, their claws glinting like blades. They were the same race that had destroyed her home, the same monsters that had killed her husband. The widow's body trembled, but she pressed her children tighter against her chest. "Do not look at them," she whispered. "Stay with me." The human soldiers muttered nervously. One of them hissed, "Captain, we're outnumbered. We can't fight all of them." Another added, "We should retreat. Take off while we still can." The captain's jaw tightened. He looked at the widow. Her face was pale, her eyes full of fear, yet she did not run. She had nowhere to run. She had already lost everything once. The creatures spread out, surrounding them. Their leader, larger than the rest, stepped forward. Its voice was a deep growl filled with hatred. "Give us the widow. Give us the children, or you all die here." The widow's heart sank. She remembered the day they had spoken those same words to her husband. He had fought, and he had fallen. She shook her head, tears freezing on her cheeks. "No," she whispered. The captain stepped forward, placing himself between the widow and the enemy leader. His voice was steady, sharp like steel. "You will not touch them." The alien leader hissed, its claws scraping against the frozen ground. "Then you will die with them, human." The widow felt her chest tighten. For a moment she feared the captain might leave, like so many before, but he did not move. He stood firm, his soldiers behind him, their weapons ready. The storm screamed as the first creature lunged forward. The humans fired, blue blasts cutting through the night. The battle began again, fiercer than before. The widow crouched low, covering her children. Fire and light tore across the ruins, shaking the ground. The children cried, but she whispered comfort, though her own voice was broken. "It will be all right. It must be all right." The captain fought at the front, his rifle blazing. He shouted orders, his voice carrying over the storm. The crew obeyed, forming a shield wall around the widow. But the creatures were many, and they kept coming. One creature broke through, rushing toward the widow. She froze, clutching her children. The claws rose high. Before it could strike, the captain turned, his blade flashing in the white light. With one swift motion, he cut the creature down. Snow sprayed red as the body fell at her feet. The widow gasped, her eyes wide. The captain looked at her for just a moment, his face fierce and determined. "Stay alive," he said. The battle raged on, but the widow's heart stirred with something she had not felt in years. Hope. Snow and fire mixed in the night as the battle raged on. The frozen ground shook with every blast of human rifles and every roar of the enemy creatures. Sparks lit up the storm, shadows danced across the ruins, and the air was filled with smoke, blood, and fear. The widow held her children close, crouching low in the snow. Her body trembled with every explosion. She had lived through many battles before, but never like this. Here, her children were only steps away from death, and she could do nothing but cover them with her arms. The humans fought bravely, their weapons hummed with energy, cutting through the storm like lightning. The captain led at the front, his voice calm but firm. "Hold the line. Protect the civilians." His men obeyed, forming a wall of fire around the widow. But the enemy was endless. More red eyes glowed in the storm. More claws scraped against the ground. The creatures threw themselves at the humans again and again, shrieking in fury. One soldier was struck down, his body crashing into the snow. Another fell moments later, dragged into the darkness by sharp claws. The widow flinched each time, her heart breaking. These humans were dying for her children. Why? Why would they sacrifice so much for strangers? The captain's rifle overheated, glowing red in his hands. He tossed it aside and drew a blade from his belt. With swift, precise strikes, he cut down any creature that came near. His armor was scratched, blood stained his face, but his eyes burned with determination. The widow's children clung tighter to her. "Mother," one whispered, "will we die?" Her throat closed. She wanted to lie, to promise safety, but the words would not come. Instead, she kissed their heads. "Not while I breathe," she said. A roar split the storm. The enemy leader charged forward, swinging its massive claws. The captain met it head-on. Metal clashed against claw. Sparks flying as they struggled in the snow. The widow watched in terror. If the captain fell, they all would. Around her, the line of humans weakened. More enemies slipped through, rushing toward her hiding place. The widow's blood ran cold. She had no weapon, no strength, but she had something else, her will. With shaking hands, she grabbed a broken piece of crystal from the ruins. When one creature lunged toward her children, she stood and struck with all her strength. The crystal cut deep into its throat. The beast fell, hissing as its blood darkened the snow. The widow gasped, her hands trembling. For years she had run, hiding, surviving, but tonight she had fought back. The children clung to her, eyes wide with fear and awe. The captain, still locked in combat with the leader, saw her stand tall. For a moment, pride flashed in his eyes. She was not only a widow, she was a mother, and she would fight for her children until her last breath. The battle raged on, the night burning with fury. The humans and the widow fought side by side, bound not by race, but by something greater: survival. And as the storm howled and the snow turned red, one truth became clear. This fight was no longer just for survival. It was for the future of her children. The storm screamed as the battle dragged on. Blasts of blue fire cut through the snow, claws struck against steel, and the ruins shook with every roar. The widow's arms ached, but she held her children tight, shielding them from the chaos. The human soldiers were exhausted. Their breaths came heavy, their weapons low on power. Each shot mattered. Each swing of the blade meant survival. Still, the enemy came in waves, their glowing red eyes burning through the storm. At the center of it all, the captain fought the enemy leader. Their blades clashed again and again, sparks flying into the snow. The ground cracked beneath their weight. Each strike echoed like thunder. The captain's armor was torn, his face bleeding, yet he stood firm. The widow's heart pounded. Every second felt like the end. She knew the captain could not fight forever. The humans were brave, but they were too few. The enemy would break them soon. Her children whimpered against her chest. Their small bodies were weak, too thin, too cold. They had endured so much already. She kissed their heads and whispered, "Do not fear. I will protect you." But inside she knew the truth. She was running out of time. A sudden scream tore through the line of humans. One of the creatures broke past the defense, rushing straight toward the widow. She pushed her children behind her and grabbed the crystal shard she had used before. Her hands shook, but her eyes blazed with courage. The beast lunged. She struck. The shard pierced its throat, and the creature fell at her feet. Blood splattered across her arms, staining her skin. She gasped, trembling, but she did not fall. The captain saw her fight and shouted, "Stay alive!" But even as his words reached her, the widow understood something. The humans were brave, but they could not protect her children forever. Already too many had fallen. If she stayed, if she fought, her children might not survive. She looked at the captain. He was strong, stronger than anyone she had known since her husband. His soldiers followed him without question. And when he looked at her children, there was no hatred, only compassion. A choice formed in her heart. She pressed her children close one last time. Tears froze on her cheeks. "My stars," she whispered. "You must live. You must see the suns I will never see. You must grow strong, even if I cannot be there." Her children cried, clinging to her arms. They did not understand, but she knew. A mother always knew when it was time to let go. She stood and ran forward, leaving her children behind her. Her sudden movement drew the attention of the enemy leader. It turned from the captain and roared, charging at her. The captain's eyes widened. "No!" But the widow did not stop. She gripped the crystal shard with both hands and drove it into the creature's chest as it struck her. The force lifted her from the ground, claws tearing into her body. Pain exploded through her, but she did not let go. With one final scream, she twisted the shard deeper. The creature roared, stumbling backward. Its body shook, then collapsed into the snow, lifeless. The battlefield fell silent for a moment. The humans stared in shock. The captain's blade slipped from his hand. The widow fell to her knees, blood soaking the snow. Her breath came shallow, her vision blurred. She turned her head toward her children. They were crying, calling out for her. She smiled faintly, tears mixing with blood. Her voice was weak but steady. "Live, my stars, live." And with that final whisper, the widow's body went still. Creatures lay scattered across the snow, smoke rising from their wounds. The humans stood in silence, their weapons low, their faces pale. At the center of the ruins, the widow's body lay still. Blood stained the white snow beneath her. Her lifeless hand still clutched the shard of crystal she had used to kill the enemy leader. Her sacrifice had saved them all. The captain stood over her, his chest heaving, his blade dripping with blood, his eyes, hardened by years of war, softened now. He had seen soldiers fall, comrades die, but this was different. She had not been his soldier. She had been a mother, fighting with nothing but her love. Behind him, the widow's children cried. Their small voices pierced the frozen night. They clung to each other, their eyes fixed on their mother's still form. The captain's heart twisted. He could not leave them. Not after this. One of his soldiers stepped forward. "Captain, we need to leave. More could be coming, and those things," he pointed at the children. "They're not our responsibility." The captain turned his gaze sharply. "They are now." The soldier froze. He had never heard that tone from his commander before. It was not the voice of orders. It was the voice of conviction. The captain knelt beside the children. They backed away at first, their eyes full of fear and grief. Slowly, he removed his helmet and set it in the snow. His face was tired, worn by battle, but his eyes were steady. He reached out a hand, palm open. "I made her a promise," he said softly. "She gave everything for you, and I will not let that be in vain." The children looked at him, uncertain. The older one wiped tears from his face and whispered, "Promise?" The captain nodded. "Promise." For a long moment, the children stared at him. Then, slowly, they reached forward and placed their tiny hands in his. The captain closed his hand gently around theirs. In that moment, something changed. He was no longer only their protector. He had become their family. Behind him, the crew shifted uneasily. Some shook their heads, others lowered their eyes, but none dared to speak against him. They had seen what the widow had done. They had seen the bond form before their eyes. The captain stood, lifting the children into his arms. They clung to him, their small bodies trembling against his armor. He felt the weight of them, not just their bodies, but their future, a future that now rested in his hands. He looked once more at the widow's body. The snow was already covering her like a blanket from the world she had saved. His chest tightened, but he did not look away. "You kept your promise," he whispered to her still form. "Now I will keep mine." Turning to his crew, his voice grew firm again. "We return to the ship. These children are coming with us. The soldiers exchanged glances, but they followed his command. One by one, they turned and marched back toward the ship, their boots crunching in the snow. The captain carried the children, their small hands gripping his armor. For the first time in years, his heart felt heavy, but also alive. He had chosen not the easy path, not the safe path, but the human path. As the storm closed behind them, he knew his life had changed forever. The widow's children were his now, and he would protect them with everything he had. The human ship rose into the stormy sky, engines burning bright against the frozen darkness. The ruins, the battlefield, and the widow's body grew smaller below until the snow swallowed everything. The children clung to the captain's arms, their eyes still wet with tears. They pressed their faces against his armor, as if afraid he might vanish too. Inside the ship, the crew moved silently. No one spoke of the loss outside. No one dared question the captain's choice again. They had seen the widow's sacrifice. They had seen the captain take her children into his arms. The decision was final. The captain carried the children through the narrow metal corridors. He brought them to the warmth of the medbay, where lights glowed soft and machines hummed gently. A medic hurried forward, her eyes widening at the sight of the alien children. "Treat them," the captain ordered, "as if they were our own." The medic hesitated, then nodded. She wrapped the children in blankets, placed food in their hands, and checked their wounds. The children looked around nervously, but when the captain stayed close, they allowed the medic to work. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, the children felt warmth. For the first time in years, they felt safe. The captain stood nearby, watching. His armor was dented, his body tired, but his eyes never left the children. He remembered the widow's final words, whispered as her life faded. "Live, my stars, live." He clenched his fists. "They will live," he promised silently. "I will see to it." Later he brought them to his quarters. The stars stretched wide outside the viewing window, endless and bright. The children pressed their faces to the glass, eyes wide with wonder. They had never seen space like this, not as orphans of war, not as refugees, but as travelers with a future. The older child turned to him. "Are we your family now?" The captain hesitated. He had never been asked such a question. His life had been built on orders, battles, and discipline. Family had been a word for others, not for him. But now, looking into the eyes of these children, he understood what the widow had given him. "Yes," he said softly, "you are my family now." The children clung to him, small arms wrapping around his waist. For the first time in years, the captain allowed himself to smile. Days turned to weeks. The children grew stronger aboard the human ship. They learned new words, new ways, but they never forgot their mother. The captain told them stories of her bravery, how she had fought with nothing but love, how she had given her life so they might live. "She is gone," he said, "but her spirit lives with you. Every step you take, every breath you draw, it is her gift." The crew, once doubtful, began to soften too. They saw how the children laughed again, how they brought light to the ship. They saw how their captain had changed, less stone, more human, and slowly, they began to care as well. One night, as the ship drifted through silent stars, the captain stood at the window with the children at his side. He pointed at the endless sky. "Do you see that?" he asked. The children nodded. "Out there is a new home, a world where you will grow, where you will laugh, where you will live, and I will be there with you." The younger child whispered, "Mother would be happy." The captain closed his eyes, his chest heavy but calm. "Yes," he said, "she would." And as the ship carried them into the unknown, one truth remained clear. The widow's sacrifice had not ended with her death. It had begun a new story, a story where humans and aliens were no longer strangers, a story where love could cross the stars. Her children would live, and humanity's heart would carry her legacy forever.